Now, for this lesson, I kind of want to take a break from the writing, the playing, just talk a little bit about musicality here at the piano. So I think it's something that's very important to talk about, and maybe that's not often talked about enough, especially in more beginner piano playing. And when I talk about musicality, I just mean when we play at the piano, not just playing note to note, like something unmusical like that, but something that's really meaningful in the way you play, something that's really meaningful in what you portray at the piano. And so a lot of that has to do with the different articulations that we play. So let's quickly just go over some articulations here when we play. The first one that we've already kind of been doing anyway is legato. That's pretty much like connecting every note, just, like we said, no smeariness. Just connecting every note. There's really no separation in between. When we play melodies, this is probably kind of the default way that we play melodies. But there's a little bit more than just connecting every note. It also kind of has to do with a little bit our wrist and arm weight as well. When we play legato, we often have more of probably maybe a heavier arm and maybe more flowing of an arm and wrist as well. So for example, if I play this arpeggio legato up and down, kind of notice my arm, kind of notice my hand a little bit. There's a little bit more arm weight there, but I think that often gives just a little bit more weight to the sound, but it helps us connect it a little better. And what we often like to think about when we talk about legato as well is as if this was being played by a wind instrument or if a voice was singing it. And especially in pieces from Chopin, we kind of like to think about the melodies as if they were being sung by a beautiful singer. And I'm not going to sing for you, but I am kind of imagining how a voice might sing this in my head, as opposed to maybe a little bit something that's non-legato, maybe not as musical. It's the unmusical version. Now, here's with more legato and more of a singing quality. There's a little bit of a difference there, but especially if you're doing that over time and you're doing that within a piece that you're playing, that can really, really amp up a lot of the emotion and a lot of the gorgeous playing that you're already doing at the piano. Now, kind of the next different articulation that we haven't really talked about is non-legato. And non-legato is similar to legato, but it has a little less arm weight and there's a little bit more separation in between the notes. And this non-legato playing is a lot better for fast playing as well. And so when we play fast, we often raise the fingers a little bit more as well. So I'm just going to do a 5-finger scale here. Here's the legato version of this 5-finger scale. Here's the non-legato version. You're saying, okay, I don't really hear a difference in that. You probably don't quite there, but it's a little bit more exaggerated. It's probably a little bit more closer to a really obvious non-legato, but you can hear it way more when we go really fast. So I'm going to play that 5-finger scale much faster. I'm going to do it legato first, and you're going to kind of hear how it smears together when we try to play a really fast 5-finger scale legato. It doesn't quite work as well because we have that heavy arm weight, our fingers are just really close to the keys, but when we have a little less arm weight and we raise the fingers up a little bit more when we play, that's like really clear, right? You can kind of see my fingers are raising a lot more there, but it's a lot more clear when we have that more non-legato type of playing. Now we can talk about staccato, and you kind of already probably know what staccato is, but it's essentially if our attack at the piano is press, hold, and release, we're basically just taking the hold portion out of the articulation. So Again, we're kind of having a lighter arm weight here, and we're just raising the fingers pretty much right after we hit the key. So we're just kind of bouncing along each key. And of course there are different levels of staccato, but this is kind of just a standard crisp staccato. We often tell young kids to think about the keys as like a hot stove, like touching a hot stove, you don't want to burn yourself. It's kind of what we're doing here. So now let's just briefly talk about how we can use these different arm weights to also kind of exaggerate different dynamics and use different movements as well of our arms and hands to really expand our piano playing even more. So to start with, when we want to play pretty much as quietly as possible, what we often need to have is the lightest arm weight possible. So it's almost kind of a floating arm. So if we want to play this 5-finger scale really quietly, kind of want to have a really light arm weight, or almost just kind of floating in midair. If we're to try to play that with a really heavy arm weight, notice how some of the keys just really aren't even speaking at all. It's because when we have that heavy arm weight, it's just a lot harder to play really soft and really delicately. And I should mention as well that it's also really important to practice quietly. Probably a lot of people don't practice quietly enough, so then when they actually have to play a piece quietly, they often find themselves just where notes aren't speaking or just have really muddy articulation in soft sections. So it's really important definitely to always practice softly, and as we'll talk about later, practice to extremes. So now if we lower the arm weight just a little bit more made to a more normal arm weight, kind of like we talked about. This is kind of the standard, the default, the resting arm weight. This is useful for legato and maybe a little lighter for more non-legato playing. Like I said, this is really just a good standard default arm weight to just be able to play mezzo forte, piano, forte, to just be able to play all sorts of different dynamics and have all sorts of different expression. Now, if we lower the arm weight too much, it can definitely create a lot of fatigue, almost kind of like just lead to some muddy articulation and create a lot of fatigue in the fingers and the arms and the shoulders. So I definitely recommend having way too much arm weight. So now if we want to actually play more loudly, it's not necessarily just lowering the arm weight, though you can do that. It's really more in the wrist and the fingers. Because yeah, I can raise my arm all the way up here and just attack the key like a knife or something, but I can also play that loud just with the wrist and finger as well. Actually, play a little louder that way too. So if you do want to play something really big, really loud, I recommend just staying more in the fingers and in the wrists. So let's say we want to play some of these really, really loud, let's just do some loud C major chords all across the piano. Just kind of notice my fingers and my wrist. Playing quieter, raising the arm weight. Now we're going to play louder and use it all in the fingers and the wrist. We'll play a little louder. So we're using even more of the fingers there with the fast stuff. So that's just really kind of an example how we vary the arm weight, vary the finger action, and just using that to create some really musical experiences. Now, we often hear students being told, or we often hear people tell other pianists to open up. You need to open up when you play. And That can mean some different things, but I think generally what it means is often not because the student is lacking passion or lacking motivation or conviction when they play. It's usually just probably because they've just kind of gotten stuck playing the same way over and over again. Maybe they're just using the same arm weight over and over again. Maybe they're not varying the articulation. Maybe they're not looking for where they could play really soft or bring something out or come back down. You know, there's a lot of things that can be changed, can be varied to create some really musical experiences. And also when we tell students to open up, it can also mean just their sound is either too dull or thin, or it can also be that their sound is too aggressive and too punchy and just has no musical taste to it. And again, a lot of this just comes back to articulation and our arm weight and just the things that we do that when we play piano. And when you constrict yourself to just playing in the way you've always played, or just playing in a certain way where your sound is just thin or dull or too much or too explosive, when you just constrict yourself to those things, you really just limit yourself to any possibility or musicality that's out there. And you limit yourself from really, really musical and beautiful playing. But so now, how do we actually fix that? You know, we talked about varying arm weight and varying articulation, but how do we really make sure that we are actually able to do that? And the way that we often do that is what I like to call, what a lot of people call, playing to extremes. And what do I mean by that? Playing to extremes really is just about playing piano kind of past what is musically tasteful, and it's playing past maybe what's a good sound, but when you kind of push the piano to its limits, when you push yourself to its limits, and then when you actually go to perform a piece or play a piece, and then you come back down, I think you find yourself just way more comfortable to take some chances and way more comfortable to just be friends, be cordial with the piano. And so ways we might do this is what I often did was when I was younger, and that was just play way too darn fast. And when we do that, we're not really learning the right technique or fingerings, but what we're doing is just allowing ourselves to just completely be open to whatever musical possibilities may come our way. Or on the other hand, we might play dreadfully slow, and so then all of a sudden maybe we play dreadfully slow, we might be thinking more about these really intricate dynamic shapings, or maybe we're thinking about these really careful articulations and just focusing on stuff that we never really thought about before. Another way to play to extremes is to play in different musical styles. So maybe if you're playing some classical piece, I don't know, something along the lines, maybe something that's like kind of that, maybe you just play in a different style, maybe you swing it. That wasn't the exact same melody, but you get the idea. Or maybe you're playing a piece and just start improvising over it. I did that a lot when I was younger. I think that also helped me just expand my musical horizons to other possibilities. So maybe you're playing a piece, you get to a certain bar, you just say, hey, I'm just going to start improvising from here, and just see what the composer might have written had they continued. And all these things are just going back to playing to extremes. They're playing to these things that probably go past what is musically tasteful, but they really go a long way in helping you get rid of that critique when we say you need to open up. Because when you come back down to a more normal playing style, I think just subconsciously you're just allowing yourself to be more open to whatever possibilities are really out there. If you're a composer or a music producer who uses the piano to shape your musical ideas, whether you're writing for orchestra, producing hip-hop, rock, EDM, or anything in between, the Piano Composer is for you. This step-by-step course shows you how to go beyond simple blocked chords and turn your ideas into expressive, fully developed piano pieces with variation, climaxes, beautiful transitions, build-ups, and so much more. For further information, be sure to check out the link down in the description. And if you found this helpful, please leave us a like and subscribe to the channel for more content just like this.